Hey, I'm Super. Welcome to the Monkey Farm. When I was 7 years old, a new cartoon came on the air with an associated toy line because it was the 80s, called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I was absolutely the audience for this, and I was all in on it. Later that year, when I won $50 in a raffle at a matinee movie for kids, I don't even remember what the movie was I was watching, but I won $50. The first thing I did was go directly to Toys R Us, rest in peace, and buy the Castle Grayskull playset. I loved He-Man. For a long time, there were rumors that Mattel had stolen the entire idea for He-Man from the hit Conan the Barbarian movie that came out in 1982. Because the cartoon had come out the following year. The rumors were so persistent that Universal sued Mattel, but the lawsuit was dismissed after Mattel proved that they'd been developing the character since before cameras even rolled on Conan a couple of years prior. And honestly, while there were a few surface similarities between Conan and He-Man visually, their characters were completely different, and all of the other characters involved and the plot and the setting of the two different stories was so deeply different that I can't imagine Universal had any shot of winning in the first place. There's been one live-action film of He-Man, a spin-off series featuring He-Man's twin sister She-Ra, a reboot of that, several attempts at a rebooted animated series of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, with varying success. I'm talking about all of this because a few days ago, Netflix released part one of a two-part first season of Masters of the Universe Revelation, which is a direct sequel to the original animated series that ran from 1983 to 1985. Instead of a reboot, though, like the Netflix She-Ra series, this series treats the original He-Man series as canon and is full of references to the original show. Now, I cannot discuss any of this without getting into spoilers, so if you haven't watched the show yet and you plan to, and you don't want to be spoiled, I suggest not watching any further into this video. Watching. What is that? Whatever. Having grown up watching the original cartoons, I feel like this is a nice follow-up that fixes a few of the sillier bits of the show while still staying true to the spirit of everything. Prince Adam no longer has a disguise that consists solely of, I'm wearing a shirt and have slightly less of a tan, which was always a little ridiculous even when I was like 7 or 8 years old. It's believable in this update that people wouldn't think he's the same person as He-Man, just as an example of something that they've done a little bit of a upgrade on without drawing attention to it. The voice acting in the show is excellent. Mark Hamill as Skeletor is great, of course, because he always is. But a ton of the rest of the cast is pretty top-notch. You've got Henry Rollins, Tony Todd, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Kevin Conroy is in a couple episodes as Merman, and it's a very different performance from the old cartoon, but he really owns it, and it all works because the dude just has a great voice. That's why he's still the best Batman. And I can't really go through every role, but there are no weak links in this as far as the voice acting. And considering the circumstances of most of the recording being done from people's homes due to the panini, it's even more impressive how well the voices are. And the writing in here is funny when it needs to be, and it's serious where it needs to be, and it's just full of action when it needs to be. And it gives room for all of those things to occur without undercutting one with the other. And it has twists, and oh my god, does it have a cliffhanger for part 2 of the season that's eventually coming out. I'm not sure when that's coming, but I'm definitely here for it. The showrunner for all of this, for this series, is Kevin Smith, who is known for movies like Clerks, Mallrats, and Dogma. And I think it's interesting that he's relatively restrained here in his writing, which is pretty solid. And everybody else's writing on each episode is also just as solid. And as I said before, there are jokes, but they don't linger on them too much or let them overstay their welcome. And for a guy whose background is mostly known for his stoner comedy, that's surprising to some people. For example, there's an entire scene with Moss Man in episode 1, and if I'm honest, I expected a weed joke in here, and I think anybody familiar with Kevin Smith's work and who he is probably also did. I was sort of pleasantly astonished that there wasn't one. Sometimes the best way to do comic relief is knowing when not to do a joke. And there's an art to that that some writers don't have a grasp of. And the dramatic moments are given room too. Orko was one of my favorite characters on the old show. I know there were a lot of people who didn't like him because he was kind of comic reliefy, etc. But he really shines here. And again, spoilers here, I don't want to ruin this for you. He dies in episode 4, but it's in the most heroic, badass way possible. Like, they didn't make him just a joke character. He has an entire arc that's about him feeling ashamed that he didn't live up to the potential of his parents, that his magic isn't strong enough, and that he keeps goofing up, even though he's trying his best. But in that moment where the team needs him and he's the only one who can save the day, he finds his power, and it's kind of moving. I hate seeing him go. Like I said, he's been one of my favorite characters since I was 7 years old, but he went out on top. If he's got to go, this is the way to do it, that shows love for the potential of this silly little dude whose spells never quite work out. The spell finally works, and he is absolutely fearless in the face of basically like a fear demon. Now, I can't talk about this show without addressing that there are people who have been complaining online for months, sight unseen of the show, that the new show is too woke or whatever. They're pretty much proven wrong here once you watch it, unless they consider it too woke to have women characters with multiple lines of dialogue. If that's too woke, cry harder, because this isn't a problem. I kind of like just wonder where the too woke complaint comes from, because it keeps getting done even now after the show's been released. I don't think these people watched the show and they're just continuing to bitch and moan because they just don't know what else to do with their lives. I don't know where the too woke complaint comes from, because I just don't see it anywhere in the show. Like, I feel like too woke would be maybe even a slightly valid thing to say if there were like a bunch of constant scenes of people like soapboxing to spout monologues about like how women are just as strong as men or something else, which some women are just as strong as men, and so whatever, like even if they said that, that wouldn't be a problem. But there's not even any of that. Like, there's no like heavy-handed like dialogue that's all like heavy and forced on you. It's just a story of people finding their power, which is kind of pretty on brand for Masters of the Universe. I don't know, but this is fun. This show's fun. It's true to the characters I grew up with, and it has actual stakes. Like literally the destruction of the entire universe is at stake here, and they've got to find a way to, complete their mission in order to prevent that from happening. Some of the complaints seem to be that He-Man isn't front and center in every episode, but honestly, I liked where they went with it. The parts he is in, it really demonstrates character growth, and when he's not there, he's still a primary catalyst for the plot, since part of the entire journey of Teela and Orko and Evelyn and the rest of the characters is to find him and find the power sword, well, the halves of the power sword, so they can reforge the actual power sword, whatever. But it gives every character some good standout moments. Along with the aforementioned Orko arc, there's some cool stuff with Evelyn, and Man-at-Arms gets to demonstrate some serious badassery in battle and his utilization of technology. And the tech stuff is something I always felt set this universe apart from most sword and sorcery stories, so it's very cool to me that they played that up on multiple levels. Man-at-Arms showing up with a giant laser cannon twice the size of him and blowing up an army is just... I just loved it. There's even an entire subplot arc of the show about Triclops. Freaking Triclops. He becomes a leader of a religious cult that worships technology. Worships. Okay, whatever. I know that sounds ridiculous, and it is, but it's also not played for laughs. And there's a dash of body horror in it that was mildly disturbing, but in like a good way. Again, the show knows when to go for the laugh and when not to, and it's masterful. That's not a pun, that's just the correct word to use here. So, I don't know, people are complaining that He-Man isn't in this enough. But I think he's in it the right amount. He's still one of the heroes of the piece. He makes big sacrifices multiple times because he's a hero. He gives up being in heaven because it's the right thing to do for Eternia. And the cliffhanger they leave us on, his fate is still very much in question. But that's what makes it a great cliffhanger. It's a very Empire Strikes Back kind of ending. One of our heroes is wounded, perhaps mortally. A few of the heroes have fallen already, and it seems like all is lost. Skeletor is triumphant. In the words of a character from another beloved 80s cartoon,
"Oh shit, what are we gonna do now?"
I don't know how they're going to fight their way out of this, but I can't wait for part 2 to find out. There's no official release date as I record this, but it's assumed to be within a few months, so see you again around September or October, I guess. In the meantime, I'm going to keep making more videos. I hope you'll keep watching them. And hit the like button if you're so inclined. If you want to comment about what you liked or didn't like about the show so far, you can type that in below. If you want more of me and my face, hit subscribe and the bell notification to find out when I put out new stuff. And until we meet again, thanks for coming to my meltdown.